principle for barristers that they take whatever trade presents itself at the front of the queue, passing no judgment on their clients. Well, a group of lawyers now argue that the climate crisis is so large that they won't abide by that rule.
Well, Henry, my learned clerk, what are my orders today?
There's a con. Waiting for you, sir.
Oh?
In a new matter from Morris Nooks and Parsley.
New matter?
Yeah, the Bermondsey stabbing. Mr. Nooks says you'll have read about it in the papers.
My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky, or a murder in the offing.
Rumpole of the Bailey loved representing murderers, but not all barristers might be as keen to take on unpopular clients, which is why the cab rank principle is such an important feature of the British legal system. Barristers must take on any clients who require their services, otherwise not all defendants could be guaranteed a fair trial. That's why a declaration published today and signed by dozens of lawyers has ruffled a few wigs. In it, the signatories declare that climate change poses such a threat to the rule of law that they pledge to withhold their services in respect of supporting new fossil fuel projects and action against climate protesters exercising their democratic right of peaceful protest. The pledge has been criticised by former Justice Secretary Robert Buckland, who called it a very odd approach and warned that when lawyers start picking and choosing, it undermines the independence of the legal profession. So are climate activists a special case, or could this move threaten to unravel one of the golden threads running through the British justice system? Well, I'm joined now to discuss all that by the solicitor Andrew Kidd, part of a group called the Society of Conservative Lawyers, and also by Jodie Blackstock, one of the barristers who signed that declaration saying they will not prosecute peaceful climate protesters. So, Jodie, I'll put that Robert Buckland's quote to you, that it's fundamentally against the independence of the legal profession.
I don't agree with that, and I think if the declaration is read in its entirety, that will be clear. This isn't about us breaching the cab rank rule. The cab rank rule requires us not to refuse work when the instructions come to us. These aren't instructions that I have had. The declaration is about us expressing in good conscience what we will draw a line on actually taking in the future in our work. And the reason for that is we are facing an existential threat. Those are the words of Her Majesty's Treasury said last year. The UN Secretary General has said it is a moral and economic madness to extract further fossil fuels from the ground. We are in a position where the UN IPCC has said this week that we are on miles off track for 1.5 degrees. The facts and the evidence demonstrate that if we extract further fossil fuels from the ground, there's likelihood to be significant harm caused to human life. So that's the starting point here.
So the starting point of the analysis is that for you, this issue, and for the signatories, is just so overwhelming and so towering that you've taken this different approach.
Absolutely. Now, there is a rule, and it's a non-discrimination rule in our Code of Conduct as barristers that says that we can't refuse to act generally on the nature of a case, and that's the rule that potentially we might be risking here. However, it's important to be aware of that's not in isolation. We have core duties as barristers, and these are rules that I've upheld for 19 years. Honesty, integrity, and upholding the rule of law. Fundamentally here, I do not want to commit any criminal acts, and supporting the extraction of fossil fuels, which will lead to the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands of people down the line, is being complicit in committing criminal acts.
Well, let's discuss that. Let's bring in Andrew on this.
I think
it's an emergency, it's a crisis.
This is not about climate change. This is not about the monumental catastrophe that is climate change. This is about the cab rank rule and the rule of law. And with the greatest of respect, Jodie, this is a radical departure from the rule of law. And you wouldn't be complicit in criminal acts because acting for fossil fuel providers and generators are operating within the law. So this is about a departure from an entrenched and historic system which has served the English legal system well for a long time. So this is a radical shift from the rule of
It's
law.
not that radical. I mean, you're a solicitor, and you can pick and choose who you want.
Not really, Faisal. I've got to act in the same way that Jodie has, with integrity and honesty in my approach to clients and cases. So whilst we're not subject to the cab rank rule as such, we can't just pick and choose. There's a prescribed way of dealing with cases.
So, Jodie,
I'm sorry, that there isn't a rule for solicitors in the same way that we would be affected here potentially.
I mean, you are a barrister, so it does apply to you.
It does apply to me, and you will find, I think, next week that the Law Society will have something to say on how its members react to climate change. The question here is about what does the rule of law mean?
Well, hang on. No, you're taking this issue and applying and saying it takes things way away from any other norm. So, for example, you'd be happy, would you, to act in a case that defended an oligarch close to Putin?
I would be more than happy to defend in court a fossil fuel actor, CEO, who is down the line in 10 years' time on trial for corporate manslaughter, because they have a right to a fair trial. They have a right to access to justice.
But you won't prosecute
But what I
these climate
wouldn't want to
campaigns.
do, well, that's a different matter. I would not want to act for that company in brokering a new fossil fuel deal, because it's the new fossil fuel deals we know from the facts and the evidence that will be the cause of hundreds of deaths, the potential wiping out of species around the world.
Deals, would you work for an arms company?
This particular
But
issue
can I just say,
is
you asked
so
it-
significant.
But
It is so
posing the-
significant, it requires a bright line
But
rule.
then that's a
But you're
subjective judgment.
But you're posing the question, therefore you're shifting from being a member of an independent profession to judge and jury. You're deciding what is a special case.
I think ultimately that's going to be a matter for the Bar Standards Board to review. But on the issue of climate change, which is an existential threat to
some
every
people
part
aren't
of
seeing
human
it as an
life,
existential threat, or Putin's oligarchs are an existential threat. I think it's a thin end of the wedge, this, isn't
it's
it?
not
Well,
the same scale.
signatories
And
to
we
the
have
Declaration
You,
of Self...
you assert that it's not at the same scale, but I mean that is a subjective judgment, is it not?
Potentially it is, but this declaration is very carefully construed. We talk about new fossil fuel projects, not all fossil fuel projects. We're not talking about every carbon emission. We're talking about what the science has agreed and the leaders of our world have agreed is where the problem lies, and the consequences of which will be catastrophic.
It's a kind of form of civil disobedience.
It is.
What's wrong with that?
It's unprecedented. The Bar, I don't think, has ever done that before in its history. But it's for lawmakers, it's for parliamentarians to make the law, and it's for us as lawyers to advise our clients on the law. It's not for us to become judge and jury and say what's right and what's wrong, what's a special case, what isn't. This is so severe, we can't deal with this, we can deal with that. That's not our role.
We must leave it there, I'm afraid, because the programme has ended. Great to debate that live. Thanks for coming in. But we just about have